Hey, do you want to come over and make a pot of tea, bring your favorite crystals? We could talk about our birth charts, spirits, the latest house spells we've been doing. Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm that witch next door. All right. Hello, my wonderful magical neighbor. Welcome to another episode of That Witch Podcast. I'm Danny. I'm that witch next door. You already know me. Today, however, we have such a special, such a unique, and really ultimately important guest. I am so excited to introduce you to Sasha the Pagan Homemaker today because being a mom and a caregiver is a massive, massive part of my purpose and piece of my identity. And as we move into this year, really focusing on magical and witchcraft centric content around here, this is a perfect time to talk about the moon and motherhood. So, Sasha, my dear, we have a little tradition around here. Please introduce us. Let us know who you are, your big three, and what it is that you do.
Hi, thanks for having me, Danny. I'm so excited we're doing this. So I'm Sasha. I'm the Pagan Homemaker. My big three are Gemini Sun, Aquarius Moon, and Leo Rising. I know that our charts are nearly the same. We've got nearly the same degree of Leo Rising, I think. I always love listening to your podcast because I know when you speak about your chart, I'm like, oh, I have really similar placements, like house placements and stuff. Like, I have that as well. So I am an astrologer as well. Primarily, I'm a mum, but I did go through a whole, and I think people will resonate with this. I went through this whole, you're meeting people at the playground, you're chatting. What do you do? I'm just a mum. I was like, hold a second. I am not just a mum. I do so much. So I am a women's retreat facilitator. I have just finished my certification as a multidimensional soul healer. I'm an astrologer. I read tarot. I read runes. I read smut. I do all sorts. We live on a little block in town here out in outback South Australia. My husband is the gardener, not me, but I do a lot of the help with the preserving and things like that. We planted fruit trees and growing a lot of our own produce. And my name is the Pagan Homemaker, so homemakery things. And I'm really enjoying growing into that more as my kids get older and doing all kinds of things like that. Yeah, I'm a very mixed bag, but I'm a Gemini Sun, so of course I'm a mixed bag.
I love it. And that's why we always start with the big three, because it's all right there.
Exactly. Now you know who I am.
Yes, exactly. So Sasha, you have all of these amazing skills and experience and lifestyle in homemaking, paganism, witchcraft, magic, astrology, cosmic living, cyclical living. But one of, if not like your really main, like driving purpose or focus is the void of course moon.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is kind of an elusive topic around beginning astrologers. There's always this, the void of course moon. What's the void of course moon? And I would love for you to share with our listeners, tell us about the void of course moon. What does it mean? What is its purpose in astrology and in our lives?
The void of course moon for me is a life hack to slowing down, to becoming present, and to generally coming back to self and to source. And I want to start this off by saying I am as imperfect as everyone else, and I miss the void of course moon just as much as everyone else. And I ignore the void of course moon at least as much as everyone else, partly probably because I know how valuable it is. But the void of course moon is the thing that makes it complicated is it's never the same amount of time. It's never at the same time. It's not as predictable. The full and new moons, they're every month, they're every 2 weeks, one of them's going to happen. And the void of course moon does happen every 2.5 to 3 days. But when it starts, how long it goes for, that literally changes every 2.5 days. And so it can be really hard to pin down. The void of course moon is a period of time where the moon is not making any aspects as it continues its transits. So as it goes, and for our less astrologically inclined folks, the moon transits through all 12. People can see my hands, right? That's
yeah,
they're watching
on
the video.
If you're watching on
my
YouTube,
hands are going like this.
We've got two lots of Gemini energy over here. You should be watching on YouTube because we're definitely expressing with our hands around here.
Their hands are going, yeah. As the moon travels around the zodiac, obviously it goes through all 12 signs, and we know it does this once every 29 days. That's our lunar cycle. As it does that, it will make angles or aspects to other planets in the sky. It'll be conjunct Mars, it'll be opposite the sun, it'll be trine Venus, it'll be, it'll make these angles, these relationships to different players as it moves. From that point until it enters the next sign, that's the void of course moon period. So you can already see how quickly this can be really variable. So if its final aspect is at 29 degrees of Gemini, the void of course moon is going to be itty bitty. If its final aspect is at 15 degrees of Gemini, it's a much longer period of time. And then from that's that time. We usually think about this void of course moon period as being the time when the moon has fulfilled all of its contracts within Gemini. So it's like if you're in a corporate setting and you're working on a project, you've met all of your deadlines, you've met all of your meetings, you've attended everything you have to do, all your relationships are fulfilled. And there's that lull and there's that rest period afterwards. Well, hopefully you have that. You should. That's this void of course moon period. All of your contracts are complete. All of the jobs within that project, the moon's project with Gemini, are complete. And we have that void of course moon time. That sliver of time, whether it's 1 minute or 38 hours, there's a 38, I've written it down, but there's a 38-hour void of course moon next year. Enormous. So sometimes they are way over a day.
Wow.
And sometimes they are 3 minutes on your Tuesday afternoon. And both are really important for different reasons. And how we work with them is really important for different reasons. But essentially, it's that last sliver of time when a moon is in a sign where it makes no further contracts with any other players in the cosmos. We get to take a beat.
I love that. It really is a simple and broad concept at the same time because its definition is simple. It's the period of time between making its last planetary aspect until it moves into the next sign. But its variability makes it a lot more complex. It's not nearly as neat and tidy to track as lots of other patterns that we track in
You can
astrology.
miss it completely. Very, very easily.
Yes.
You can miss it completely.
Yes.
A third of them happen when we're sleeping, just by the nature of the thing. So it's very easy to miss them. You can, if you have the full moon or the new moon and you have that kind of leeway, like the full moon, maybe you missed it last night. You didn't put your crystals out last night or whatever is your practice for the full moon. You can just do that tonight. Like that's, you're not going to miss out on those energies of a full moon because you've got kind of a 2 to 3 day window there while the moon is in that sign. But if you blink and miss a 3-minute void of course moon, you missed it. And that's okay. Like I said, I actively skip them. Don't feel like you're not a good witch because you're missing a void of course moon. But the ability that they carry to support your life does blink and miss it. The benefit is there's another one in another 2.6 days.
Right.
Another 2.6 days later, another one 2.6 days later.
Exactly. It depends on. So there's a few different ways to look up the void of course moon. So share with us some of the different ways that you do, or maybe some of the things that you offer to help people do that. Because I think that's probably people's biggest or next question too.
Yeah,
is
how when
I
do you know when
look
this
at this.
thing is?
Where do I learn about it? Yeah,
and if it is a 3-minute void of course moon, and you're looking at a calendar that's ET when you're PT, well, you're already out. So I'm actually not sure how I discovered the void of course moon. The woman who kind of introduced me to astrology was Kyra Howarth, and she has a book on moon manifesting, and I think it was in there. And I think I don't know why, for some reason, I latched onto this idea, but I did. But from there, I got a honeymoon almanac. So, you know, what about honeymoon? We love honeymoon.
Very well. Yep.
If you don't have one, here's my stickers for next year.
Yep.
So the great thing about the honeymoon almanac, if you have one, you got your spiral band. See, the thing is, you can get yours spiral band and post it out to you. I have to self-print. Too expensive to get a poster from the US.
Oh,
it's cheaper for me to self-print.
That is
over
a
here.
luxury. I love the spiral. Yes.
Yeah. We started printing, like editing the cover to put the date on it so that I can have them all lined up on my shelf.
Ooh, I love that.
If you are self-printing, you can do that. This will actually have it written in there. So if this is your day-to-day diary and you're, you know, using your honeymoon almanac as your day-to-day diary, it's in there. So it's a highlighted grey section, and it'll say, for example, I'm looking in July. I managed to grab my son's birthday somehow. Of course I did. I'm my mum. It just says moon void course 7 hours 20 minutes, and it's there. So it's right there. And for a 7 hour and 20 minute one, you know, obviously you've got a lovely broad window you can work with. But what I've done is I've taken this and turned it into a downloadable Google Calendar, because I don't use this except in esoteric and work capacities. It lives on my desk. It doesn't go everywhere with me. I don't take it on holidays, anything like that. And I'm sure you'll be the same, I like a ping on my phone to go, hey, pay attention to me. Here's a notification, which I've put in there. So I've taken that data and I've created a online Google Calendar, which it can be anything. It links to iCal, Outlook, whatever it is you're using. And that period of time, it tells you, same as in the almanac, like what time it starts, what time it finishes, and the duration of it. But the title is the duration. So it'll say void of course moon in the sign, because we haven't talked about this yet, but the sign in which the moon is void obviously plays into the energetics of what you might choose to do or how you might choose to act during that void of course moon. But the duration. So it will tell you, void of course in Aquarius, 7 hours and 20 minutes. And I send a notification 12 hours before. So he'll be like, oh, tomorrow there's a void of course moon in Aquarius. What am I going to do about it? Like, I've got 12 hours. Here's my 12 hours notice. It's a 3-minute long one. That's like perfect for me to just like do a 3-minute meditation on Insight Timer. That's what I'll do, because it's in Pisces and it's a waning moon and it's in 3 minutes. I'll do it, give you just enough of a notification that'll come up on your phone to go, oh, there's one tomorrow or there's one in 12 hours. What am I going to do about it? There's another notification that comes through at the 10-minute mark, so you don't miss it.
I love that.
And
it's something that's very helpful, very, very helpful to me as well, for sure. I'm somebody that needs notifications and sounds and reminders.
And this doesn't have sound. It is a silent notification, but I'm pretty certain you can change those settings to reflect what you need as well.
I'm sure you can just make those automatically have sound or no sound. And depending on your preferences. So I love that you brought up the sign, the phase, these different energetics, especially because the way you worded it is, you can look at that information and ask yourself, what do I want to do about that? Like, how do I want to spend my time? Or how do I want to act during that time is what you said. And I love this because I think that to all the busy moms, dads, parents, caregivers, it sounds like this daunting thing to adopt astrology into your life. It sounds like this daunting thing that you have to track, and you have to remember to do stuff for it. And Sasha, you and I approach astrology and use it very, very similarly, where we let the energy, inspire us, inspire our intentions, our actions, and most importantly, I think our mindset, heading into that time or just embodying the energy of that time. And so when you say that the void of course moon is an opportunity for us to take a beat. Elaborate on that a little bit more for us. You talked about how the moon in its chapter in each of the signs, each of these little 2.5, 3-day periods, it's accomplishing all these tasks in this project within each of those signs. What, therefore, is kind of the purpose of that void of course moon time? How can we physically or emotionally or mentally take advantage of that or lean into that?
The simplest way I always think of, making an analogy is it's like a mini retrograde. So
I love that.
If Mercury is in retrograde and you're not, somebody panics about that. And I think if you listen to Danny's podcast, you're not. If you still are, just listen to more podcasts. You'll get over that, I promise. Because none of these things are scary. They just are. There's no emotion attached. They just are. I like to think of it like a mini retrograde. If Mercury's in retrograde, we might not work on the computer. We might avoid travel. If the moon is void, we might choose not to work with the computer. And this isn't sign specific at this point, just ideas. What's my usual going, and what's the opposite of that? So I might not move at a computer. I know people who will download, because I offer the calendar free monthly as a download, which you can buy the year up front for 33 Australian dollars. I know people will buy the calendar because they're booking flights in April and they don't want to fly when the moon is void. And then taking the sign, like if Mars is retrograde at the moment, and we're kind of, we're taking that as an opportunity to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be more aware of any arguments I get into with my spouse because they're probably less valid than usual. Same thing. If the moon is void in Aries, you might go, oh, well, I might have a bit of extra energy, Mars ruled. Maybe my downtime is going to be the punching bag, going for a walk, doing hot yoga, something that uses the energy that I have in my system, as opposed to, I don't know. And this is where it's just really personal. I like to think it's easier to kind of start with the waning and the waxing phases. So if the moon is void in a waning phase, it's really easy to absolutely take a beat. Like turn the computer off, turn the screens. Turning off screens is a big one in my house as a parent. If I can, kids, the screens are going off in 20 minutes, we're going outside for half an hour because that's the void of course moon. And, we're all managing screens as parents. However we're doing that. So screens off is a big one. And also then for me, modeling to my kids. Mum's put her phone down. And modeling to my followers, I will not be on my phone while the moon is void. It's okay for you to take breaks. It's encouraged for you to take breaks. I can't remember where I was going. And then when the moon is waxing, maybe it's a bit more of a use that energy, like I said with the Aries example. So an active rest as opposed to a passive rest. Maybe you will do something that you've been looking forward to doing that you can't justify. Like maybe I'm looking at my oil shelf that needs rearranging. There's absolutely no time in my day for that. But during a waxing void of course moon, if I have 15 minutes, I'm like, this is my 15 minutes to play with colourful bottles. I want to allow myself that joy because it's so hard to justify any other time. And it doesn't need doing, Right. The other big one, and this is where I really started with it, was, the moon is void from 7 p.m. I'm going to bed. Or the moon is void until 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. I'm staying in bed. If you can use the void of course moon to get more sleep, and that's all you do with it, your life will improve because most of us really need better sleep, more sleep.
I really love these really simple, practical, but very effective reminders that, it can be about shutting off your screen altogether. It could be about being really intentional with your screen time during that time. Something that I've really, really gotten into the last couple of years is setting up a bunch of different modes and profiles on my phone so that when I go into work mode, when I go into relax mode, I have one that's strictly called social media break, and it allows every single app except for a social media app.
That's genius.
It's just to take a break from those sometimes. And I do that sometimes I do that because I don't feel like being on social media, but sometimes I do that because I'm being like a crack addict about social media. You know what I mean? When you're like, oh my God, the scroll has been so long and I feel icky right now and I just need to like shut these off right now. Like
I do that every dark moon.
this,
That's one of my, like, I take a social media.
yes, I
And
know
it's,
that
you know,
about you.
it's,
I love that about you.
It's not, and it's not, I'm not super strict about it. You know, I will still scroll social media and I will still be in the DMs, but I give myself a chance to not be present. Like my stories aren't, like I don't have a story. There'll be nothing there. I have a story like every day. And my stories are where I live my life, you know, and people, that's where you can get to know me and what I'm doing and what's going on and what the kids are up to and all the chaos. But I will turn the stories off for like 3 to 7 days every month in the dark moon because it's bloody toxic. And then I hit the point, you probably do the same thing, you hit the point where you're like, I don't want to be here anymore. And you finally turn it off because you finally give yourself permission to turn the freaking stories off or whatever it is. And then you get like 4 or 5 days down talking, I don't want to go back. Do I have to go back?
I think that is so connected. I think that is so connected to Leo rising too. And potentially any other rising sign that like really appreciates being seen. When we go into dark moon time, I think that there's this very natural reaction among anyone, regardless of your moon sign, to go into the dark because that's the purpose of the dark moon time. But especially for us solar ruled babies, us Leo risings.
Yeah. Well, anyone
I feel
who's
like full moon, I
referenced,
just naturally feel like coming out of my shell. I feel comfortable on there. I want to show my face. I'm fine showing my face. I'll chit chat all day. Shit won't get to me. It won't bother me the same way at all. Dark moon time, new moon time, and I'm like, I want to be in a silent hole.
And it'll link with your menstrual cycle too. So depending on where your menses is, like my cycle hasn't returned postpartum yet. But I remember that I was a really, really lunar-driven being after my daughters were born. And it took nearly 2 years for my cycle to come back. So I had really embedded those lunar patterns into my, like, you know, higher energy times, lower energy times, higher, you know, that kind of, those waves. And then my cycle came back opposite to the lunar. So I was ovulating at the new moon and oh my God, it was so hard to be like, well, internally I'm at my peak, but cosmically we're at a dip, and learning to navigate that. And that was a really important lesson for me. And like, rest is important all the time. And if you are adequately rested, you will find adequate energy. But then I don't know how much that's a projector thing too. But it was really important for me to learn, like, this can be in complete opposition. And that was really hard. I found it really difficult for the only 8 months between having my cycle back and conceiving my son. But it was like, everything is upside down and wackadoodle, and how does anyone live like this? And because you really fall into those patterns, and I think that regardless of what particular parts of your internal and external cycles, seasons, menses, lunar, personal natal, all of those, you find comfort in that, and they get comfortable, and then to have them change and shift and move and everything else is really challenging. But that's what I call like working with the cosmos in these ways. I just call it living in alignment. Just living in alignment, you know. And you talk about planetary day rulers as well, planning your work around planetary day rulers, bringing the void of course moon into that, using the dark moon as the divine rest it was designed to be. All of those things. And then just checking in with yourself, because I've found that one of my girlfriends, as soon as the new moon is exact, she's like, bam, I'm back, baby. Like, here I am. And I don't find I'm back for another day or two yet. And I think about, like, our ancestors would have known that there was an exact new moon happening. But until that sliver was seen back in the sky again, the moon wasn't back. And I kind of find takes me a day or two until, there's the moon, she's back. I'm back. I feel good again. My dark moon is longer than is on paper, is my point. And the more you kind of just sit back and lean into that. Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's really living in alignment, cosmic living, cyclical living, lunar living. All of this really is about, you know, taking all of those patterns and cycles into consideration, comparing and contrasting with your own, um, and leaning into what works for you. So, Sasha, tell us a little bit more about your personal story and journey to becoming a magical mom. So, first of all, have you all were you practicing magic and energetics before you had your girls, your first twins, and or is it something that developed afterward? You know, what has magical living and lifestyle and your motherhood story looked like for you?
I've been a witch for 20 years. I got my first book on Wicca and magic when I was 13. And I think I did self-dedication with my girlfriend later that year, so 13 or 14. First I did tarot cards at 14, though tarot is an example that I just didn't, I tried, and I have tarot journals from high school, but just didn't sit with me till after I had kids. Didn't work. I mean, it didn't not work. It just didn't flow. I worked with the runes a lot instead. I have Norse ancestry. So that always worked really well for me. I never had an issue there, and I would work with those a lot more. But I remember practicing spell work in high school, and having grand plans for going to uni and finding the other witches on campus, and all those sorts of things. I remember when I first started dating my husband, who is a practicing Christian, that, I'm Wiccan, right? And he had no idea what that meant. And I remember that he asked me to date him formally, like we used to, will you be my girlfriend? And I didn't say yes until he understood that I was a witch. And that was, we got married 12 years ago today, actually. So that's, years and years ago. But like anyone, I fell in and out. I wasn't actively practicing. I considered myself a couch pagan forever. That was my term. I had lots of crystals. I've always been a crystal witch. I had crystals before I had a book on paganism. All of that. But it fell out of life, particularly working full time. And then I had a lot of mental health issues as a young adult. I was medicated for depression a couple of times. I'm still a recovering alcoholic. That's flared back up again in my life recently. I'm managing that through motherhood as well. And you look back now and you go, oh, why didn't you come back to practice? Like, why didn't you come back to your magical practice? And it's like, well, I didn't think about it. It didn't come back in a really concrete way. But I had a mental breakdown. I was 28, I think, and I went off work. And at the same time as that, I got some essential oils. And I loved this because it made me feel like I had an apothecary, like I was a potion maker. And they really helped me, like, therapeutically and energetically kind of get my shit back together. But then I conceived at the same time. So I had been battling infertility for 6 years. Diagnosis of endometriosis, excision, accidental twin pregnancy. Natural but accidental. We'd kind of given up on trying, and then we were pregnant, and then we had twins. And obviously we were thrilled, but it was like, oh shit. Well, whatever path we were on just did a full fucking 180. Let's go. Let's do this. And so it was through like getting these oils and feeling like a witch again, making potions, feeling like a witch again, and then having my twins, and then recovering. And so there's a lot of my journey has a lot of the health stuff in it, like I said, the depression and the alcoholism and all that sort of stuff. But it was through that space that I was then able to have, and this is part of the blessing of having twins, was that no one was expecting me to go back to work. No one was expecting me to do more than kind of the basics, because there was 2 infants, not 1. And And so I was given a lot more space. So I wasn't. I also allowed myself the space, just not to do anything. And that's when my Instagram had witchy things on it because I like the witchy things. Really came back to it. I studied astrology. I studied tarot. I started getting my hands on all the books. I got my aromatherapy certification. I started a shop making essential oil products, rollers, sprays, body and bath products. I discovered this void of course moon thing. But in hindsight, I learned about my Saturn return at the end of my Saturn return. Yeah, you know where this is going. It's Saturn return stuff. And I realized that I had quite a gnarly Saturn return. It wasn't just, a Saturn passes over Saturn and keeps going. It was Saturn passes over Saturn and retrogrades back to my degree. So I had Saturn sitting conjunct itself for nearly 2 weeks. And that was the week that I was asked to be an affiliate for a witchy academy. And I dove into this wholeheartedly. I did every single course she had. I discovered astrology at this deeper level. I discovered the void of course moon. And that was in October. And by March of the following year, I had my first void of course moon calendar that I, gave away to people for free. I also, so in October, I became an affiliate for this academy on the week that my Saturn return was exact. In November, I asked Ash for pricing for her Divinity series. And by December, I was working with Ashley Michelle.
Ashley Michelle.
Starseed Shadows. Yeah.
And 90 Day. Wonderful.
Yeah. So that's where...
As you know, very beloved neighbor around here.
Yes. Ashley is how I found you, Danny, and I'm so ever so grateful. Because, these amazing personal connections, just like get to know this person, get to know this person. And I haven't met any of you in real life because you don't need that in a lot of ways. Thank you. I think about sometimes we live in the worst time in history and sometimes we live in the best time in history. This is just the way we can make connections is beautiful. And then it just exploded. And it was having my kids and having this space after having children where I knew I wasn't returning to work. And the further down this path I got, the more I saw its potential for me as not just a practitioner, but as a business owner and as an entrepreneur. And the oils had helped me do that too, because they were the things that I started cringe sharing on Instagram. Come and join my MLM. And MLM I'm still very fond of. I'm still affiliated with it. Come and join my MLM with the cringe graphics but it helped me cut my teeth on social media marketing, I ran my first women's retreat shortly after the following year, the year later after that. But having kids as well made me see the importance of a lot of these things for their well-being. My hair is actually a lot blonder than this, but because I spend so much time inside these days, the natural bleaching doesn't occur the way it does in my kids' hair. And I remember sitting, looking in the mirror going, I thought I was blonde. I never go outside. I never spend enough time out in the sunshine. Now I've got these kids. Well, I don't want them to have that problem. I want them to get as much sunshine as possible. I want them to live a life outdoors, not a life in front of a screen. And all of the health sides of that. I was vegan for years. I was vegan vegetarian from 15. I only really stopped being vegan vegetarian a couple of years ago. Maybe no, my son's not even 2 yet. Not even 3 years ago. But it was looking at, I know that seed oil is an inflammatory. I don't want my kids to eat seed oils. So they're going to eat butter. Oh, but why am I eating seed oils? And all the little things I did as I came around, no, I want my kids to be healthier. I don't want them to end up with, and then a lot of it is I don't want my daughters to end up with endometriosis and be in a situation where they're forced into a surgery they didn't feel they had sufficient information and consented to. And generally the pain and loss of going through all of that and not understanding their cycle, like talking about cyclical living. Until I wanted to have babies, I didn't know you could only fall pregnant 5 days a month. Or less than, depending, I don't want my kids to grow up knowing that. But working with my children and realizing that, well, if we want to lead a different life, a healthier life, a better life, a life more aligned with nature, that if we're going to have a garden and we're going to know where our meat comes from, and they're going to understand their cycles, and they're going to know, their bodies and everything else. Like, I can teach them this with reverence. So they have a seasonal altar in their bedroom. And again, full disclosure, I'm a mum. It still says Yule on it, which in the Southern Hemisphere was 6 months ago. It's nearly Litha. It's Litha next week. It's not Yule next week. Switching to a Northern Hemisphere mode. Like, you just want to make it real. Like, it says Yule on it. It says that was in June. But we have a seasonal altar, and we do bury a corn dolly because we grow corn every summer. So I make a corn dolly, and then we bury a corn dolly when they help their dad in the garden. I made the girls a fairy garden because the fairies are real, and they know this. But I made it as a tool for caring for the environment more than anything. Like, it's a beautiful place, and they will find trinkets. I found a feather or a shiny rock. Mum, can I give this to the fairies? Yes, of course you can. Yes, give this to the fairies. But when one of my daughters had a tantrum one day and started destroying it, the fairies left. Like, the fairies packed up and left. All of the, because it's 100% natural materials except for a couple of polymer clay things that I had made. Those left. The fairy door, the fairy mushrooms, they left. I took them away. And then the girls, she calmed down, and a few days later, she's, Mum, I want to give something back to the fairies. I'm like, cool.
I love that.
Start leaving trinkets out for the fairies again. They might come back. And they did.
I love that. That's so cool. And honestly, that's like perfect segue into what my next question was for you. What would you say are the pros and cons of being a pagan mom, a magical witchy mom? What are the ups and downs of that? Or at least, what did those ups and downs look like for you?
The biggest ups are like making my kids aware. I think it's I don't care what you call it. I don't care if you're crunchy. I don't care if you're scrunchy. I don't care if you're conscious. I don't care if you're woke. I don't care what term you use for it. I just want my kids to be aware. And this then comes into things like growing up with critical thinking skills and not being a sheep, being able to make decisions for themselves and being able to recognize in their bodies when things are right or wrong. But yeah, I want them to know where their food comes from. Like, one of my gripes as a vegetarian and vegan for all those years was that kids don't know what beef is, because cow goes moo, but beef is food. And there's a disconnect there in our language, I think is by design. It's inbuilt into a pagan lifestyle of reverence for nature. And we are part of nature, and we should revere ourselves. And then we start coming to the idea of us as God and God as us and whatever, universal oneness and everything else. But I want my kids to have that. I want my kids to demonstrate respect and understand that they do matter, and that the things that they do and don't do, ugly, will have an impact. I can't think of any cons, actually. I can't think of any cons. But for me, it's been a pathway to a conscious parenting, conscious lifestyle. And obviously it looks different for everyone. And there's no right or wrong way to do that. Sometimes I think there is, but I try to be bigger than that. There's the way I would do things, there's the way you'd do things, there's the way someone else would do things.
Totally.
And like things like healthcare and whatever else, we've all got our ways through that. But at the end of the day, what I want my kids to do is be able to make their own decisions and feel confident in their decisions. And then if they change their mind 5 minutes, 5 years, 50 years later, to do so with grace on themselves, because they recognize their own divine oneness the same way they would recognize it in anyone or anything else. Because it's care, and I think it's come back to care. It really has given me an opportunity to be more careful as parent, and to model that for my children. At least I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Totally. And also, I think that one of the biggest, most common hangups I hear from witches and mystics, regardless of how long they've been practicing, one of the most common issues or struggles is the periods and times in our life that we feel disconnected from our magic. And I think that the exhaustion of parenthood and motherhood can add to this. I think that mom guilt can add to this. So, how has working with the void of course moon helped support you and your clients through those times of guilt, those times of feeling disconnected and stuff, especially from your craft and your spiritual routines?
Yeah, it's permission to pause. It's permission to stop. It's the recognition that everything will still be there when the moon enters Cancer. It's not going anywhere. And this, I think, this is where like you can apply it to motherhood. Like the kids are still going to be screaming when I finish a stream meditation, or the TV will still be there in an hour. We can get outside for the 57 minutes of this void of course moon. In the same way that you can go, if you're, working corporate or you're a teacher or something like that, your emails are still going to be there, or entrepreneur, anyone. Tomorrow, tomorrow, when the moon enters the next sign, your emails will still be there. Your client list will still be there. Everything is still going to be there. And this is part of the problem with the internet and social media, is that we think we always have to be on and we always have to be contactable. And that's just not true. I remember in my early days in my MLM, they were like, if your green circle in your story isn't green or isn't red, like if you have a circle in your story, your shop isn't open. Whose brick and mortar is open 24/7?
Yep.
Like literally no one. I saw that in Australia this year, one of the wins I saw a news outlet putting out was that Australians now have the right to switch off from work. It's like, wait, did you just give me permission? I kind of come back to, who do they serve? They certainly don't serve me. They definitely don't serve my kids. I don't need that. My kids don't need that. We don't need that. And I think the antidote to that is just to stop, to be, to disconnect, to rest, to give ourselves, whatever it is that makes us feel most guilty is probably the thing that's best for you. So for me, it's coming into my office, which I built as a sanctuary in my own home, and shutting the door and locking my kids out. And then we're lucky today. My husband's home. He's outside stringing Christmas lights, and the kids are happy. But often my son is at that door screaming while I'm in here trying to work. And that makes me feel horribly guilty because, my poor boy, he wants his mum. Also, his mum needs literally anything else but him a lot of the time. That's fine. So it's, the void of course moon, I think, again, coming back to because there's so much here and there's so much you can do, and you might be listening to this going, oh, well, I want to meet my local farmers and get meat from them, or I want to build a fairy garden, or, I want to use the dark moon every month. But a void of course moon, you'll see it, and it'll be a 7-hour one, and you'll go, well, I can't possibly switch off for 7 hours. No, but you can go to bed early because the moon is void.
Yeah.
And give yourself that permission. Yeah. Or you can
give yourself 15 minutes sometime within that 7 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Just give yourself a moment in that to go, oh yeah. One of the things I do is I don't remove the notification. I leave it in my notifications on my phone until I have decided how I'm going to action it. So it comes up 12 hours later and I go, oh yeah, we've got a void of course moon in Aquarius coming up. It's 15 minutes long. My husband will be home by then. I'm going to let him know that I need a 15-minute meditation after he gets home. And send the message and be like, cool, I've done that thing. Then I'll swipe the notification away. Or particularly if it's a long one, I'll leave it there. Sometimes I'll open my phone and there's the 12-hour notification and the 10-minute notification, both on my phone, because I have left it there because I haven't done anything with it yet. But yeah, using that, and if you can find a way, I like, depending on how well you know the zodiac, but I think if you just think about what would your Taurus friend do if I don't know what to do with a void of course moon in Taurus. So what would your Taurus friend do? She might go online shopping. Cool. You're allowed to scroll your phone on Marketplace and find yourself a deal.
Oh my God, nice. That's perfect. I love that example so much. So, Sasha, how would you advise our freshy beginners around here? We've got a lot of brand new folks to either the craft in general or really to like fully embracing it and embodying spiritual living, cyclical living, or living in alignment, like you called it. Because so many either are brand new or they've been kind of dabbling here and there, keeping it kind of private, keeping it kind of hidden. There's a lot of people right now that I feel like their intentions into this coming year are to really live in their craft. And how would you advise those like first, most simplest steps that people can take just to even get started, just to get the ball rolling?
The very, very first thing is to give yourself grace. You will miss the full moon. You won't pull your cards. It's not fucking up, but you'll feel like you fucked up. Like, oh, I missed the full moon again. I didn't water my pot plants. I didn't, the void of course moon came by and I didn't go to bed early. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The first thing is like if you find yourself resenting yourself for missing out on things, you're never going to get there. The first thing is like, it's okay. Let it go. The magic is already there. And the magic is in the consciousness, is being aware of. So if all you do for the full moon in Gemini is go, oh, it's a full moon in Gemini, that's fine. That's fine. You see it on Danny's Instagram as you're scrolling. Oh, it's a full moon in Gemini. Say that little mantra she's got there. That's enough. That's enough. It will build like anything. The analogy that's coming to mind for me at the moment is my alcoholism journey. Like, I had to start with one dry day a week. You can start with just like the smallest step. The first step on this path is being aware. So the analogy for that is I was aware that I was drinking every single day. That's it. Oh, there I am. I just drank again. Well, today isn't my dry day. Tomorrow can be my dry day. Real basic steps. But that's it. That's it. Start there. Be aware. Recognize it. My calendar is great for this. So, la-di-da. Because it'll pop up on your phone and you go, oh, there's a void of course moon. You might not do anything with it. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Give yourself grace.
I love it.
Give yourself grace.
So true. There's so many simple baby steps that you can take. Taking it easy on yourself and giving yourself grace is some of the most valuable medicine that we really, really can give ourselves. As humans, whether you are a caregiver for other little humans or you're a caregiver for yourself as a human. Absolutely. Yeah.
It is all of us, whether it is for little people,
right,
or like I said, or for ourselves.
Exactly.
And a lot of it is, I think, accepting that, like, we do have the power to change, and it doesn't have to be super hard, because it starts with these tiny little baby steps, and through the minute actions, you will reinforce your own divinity and your own abilities, that's where the ball will start rolling. That's where the snowball picks up, snow. I don't know where I was going with that analogy, but you know what I'm saying.
I love it. No, it's so it's so true and so valuable. I've just loved this, Sasha. I've been so appreciative of you sharing your experience and your strength and your wisdom, because it really is a special, unique, and simple but effective approach. And that's why I've always loved talking with you about these things. So please let all of our neighbors in the neighborhood know, where can we find you, Sasha? Where can we follow you? How can we work with you? How can we support you?
Thank you so much. Yeah. So again, it's the Pagan Homemaker on Instagram. I'm kind of only on Instagram. I don't do anything else. I'm just on Instagram. So yeah, just at the Pagan Homemaker, all one word, no punctuation. My website is thepaganhomemaker.com. Same thing, no punctuation. The easiest and fastest way to work with me is to download my free Void of Course Moon calendar, which comes out at the end of every month for the following month. But the paid version for the entire year is only 33 Australian dollars, which is about 24 US, I think, for the year. It's
around there.
It's crapple. It's absolutely an investment for you guys. Like, it's, and perfectly happily reimbursed for that. The other ways you can work with me are I do have it's like a Patreon style tiers, but it's not Patreon because I don't need to make Patreon set up my systems. So I do have a close friend subscription, close friends and a consult, which is a 30-minute session with me every month. And that can be whatever you need it to be. It can be tarot, it can be astrology, it can be multidimensional soul healing. It can be whatever combination that you like. I do work one-on-one with people if you just want to work one-on-one. And I do have, and I'll be launching soon, my next round of one-on-one all access coaching, which is called Embody. You used the word embody earlier, and I was like, that's it. It's about embodiment. Whether you're embodying your menstrual cycle or the lunar cycle or the seasons that are outside your window, it's about embodiment. It's about living it in your body, because we were put here in a physical 3D plane to live a physical 3D life.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm sure, based on our conversation today, there are some people who would benefit from an embodiment container. That sounds absolutely beautiful. All of the information to find Sasha, follow her, work with her, are going to be in our show notes below, of course. This has been so wonderful, Sasha. Thank you for your time and sharing your magic with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Danny. I've appreciated every little shout out you've done at the Word of Course Moon over the last 2 years. So I will wake up in the morning with a time and sometimes be like, why are all these people following me? Oh, better go listen to Danny's podcast. I think I know why. It's a really lovely surprise. So thanks for all your support for me and my business over the last few years as well.
Absolutely. The Void of Course Queen, the magical mama, one that I'm so grateful to have in my neighborhood. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was about time you got to be on here with us.
Thank you.
This was perfect. Thank you, my dear. And to you, neighbor, thank you as well for your time today and every day. We are so grateful that you joined us for this magical conversation. Make sure, my friend, that you are staying safe. You keep letting yourself have fun. And of course, everyone, stay magical out there. Questions, comments, suggestions, or just looking for That Witch outside of That Witch podcast, make sure you're following me on social media over on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and Twitter. You can find links to all of those in the show notes below. And make sure you're subscribed to my email newsletter by going to thatwitchnextdoor.com and submitting your email on the homepage.